So, in this age of global AI, there's this massive power struggle happening right under our noses, and it's all about one thing: who controls our digital world? Is it the companies that build the borderless internet, or the nations that have to govern it? Let's get into the fight for data and model sovereignty.
Okay, so the whole challenge really boils down to this one simple conflict. The digital world was designed to have no borders, but it's running headfirst into the very real, very solid walls that nations have always built to protect themselves.
And that brings us to the big fundamental question, right? I mean, think about it. An AI model can be built in one country, trained on data from 100 others, and then used by millions of people all over the globe. So, when something inevitably goes wrong, whose laws apply? Who's actually in charge here?
Here's the clash in the simplest terms. Data and AI, they move at the speed of light. But laws, regulations, national interests, they're stuck on the ground, tied to physical territory. This isn't just some small technical issue. It's like two different operating systems trying to run the world at the same time, and they are absolutely not compatible.
So, how are countries trying to deal with this mess? Well, they're starting to rally around this really powerful idea called data sovereignty. Let's dig in and figure out what that actually means.
Okay, so look at the definition here. The language is super specific for a reason. This isn't just about, hoarding data. It's about a country's authority to regulate it, to protect it, and, this is the big one, to actually get value from it. And that covers the whole shebang, from your personal info to the crazy powerful AI models that are trained on it.
To put it simply, it's all about control. It's basically a nation looking at this huge new digital economy and saying, hey, wait a minute. We want a say in how our country's data is used, who gets rich from it, and how it's going to affect our people. You could almost call it a declaration of digital independence.
All right, so if that's the what, the big question is how, right? How does a country actually do this? Well, a lot of them are starting to treat data like a strategic resource, kind of like the new oil. And just like with oil, they've come up with a playbook for how to handle it. It's got three main parts.
So this playbook breaks down into three pretty simple steps. First, you've got the rules. Then, you need the tools to enforce them. And it's all done to achieve some very specific national goals. Let's take a look at each one.
First up, the rules. This all starts with the law, with a country establishing its legal authority, what lawyers call jurisdiction. And they can claim this based on all sorts of things, like where the data is physically stored, the nationality of the person the data is about, or even just where the effects of an AI model are being felt.
Okay, so once you have the rules, you need the tools to actually enforce them. And a really big one is something called data localization. Sounds kind of technical, but it's a pretty simple idea. If the data is about our citizens, it has to be physically stored on servers inside our country's borders. Simple, but incredibly powerful.
And another huge tool is encryption, the digital lock and key that keeps data safe. But here's where it gets really tricky. Who holds the keys? A government might say, well, for national security, we need a copy of those keys. And suddenly, that becomes a huge point of conflict and a massive lever of control.
So, why bother with all of this? What's the end game? Well, the first big goal is, you guessed it, national security. If you control the data and the AI models, you can stop them from flowing to adversaries, you can protect your critical infrastructure, and you can screen AI systems that might be a threat.
And the other major goal? It's all about the money, pure economics. If data really is the new oil, then this is about making sure you own the oil wells in your own backyard. It's about building up your own domestic AI industry and making sure that value stays home instead of just flowing out to some giant tech company overseas.
But of course, it's not that easy. Nothing ever is, right? Pushing for this kind of sovereignty creates some really tough choices. There are no perfect solutions here, just a bunch of big trade-offs.
Yeah, this quote here absolutely nails the biggest danger. It talks about creating interoperability cliffs. It's a great phrase. Basically, it means we could create a world where technology from one country just stops working when it hits the border of another. It can't talk to their systems. That would fundamentally shatter the internet as we know it.
And that brings us to the first huge trade-off: openness versus control. On one hand, you've got the amazing innovation that comes from a free, global flow of information. But on the other, you have a nation's very real need to regulate things and protect its people. And the hard truth is, you just can't have 100% of both.
And what's the next big dilemma? Security versus utility. Turns out the very things you do to make data secure, like locking it down within your borders, can make it way less useful. I mean, how are you supposed to train a world-class AI model if all the best data is trapped in separate digital silos all over the planet? And last but not least, there's a really deep, almost philosophical conflict here. It's individual rights versus the claims of the state. You and I have a right to privacy, a right to control our own data. But the government might say, well, we need that data for the collective good, for national security. And those two claims, well, they don't always line up.
Okay, so with all these massive challenges on the table, what's the way forward? Is there a path that respects national sovereignty without just smashing the internet into a million little pieces?
Well, the answer seems to start with just smarter design. Instead of building these giant digital walls, the idea is to build systems where things like trust and privacy are baked in from day one. Systems that are flexible, modular, and really built to cooperate, not to isolate.
And look, this isn't just some abstract wishful thinking. There's a real, practical toolkit that's starting to take shape right now. We're talking about things like sovereign clouds, trusted execution environments, and data registries. These are the actual tools, the real building blocks for a smarter, more balanced digital future.
Which leaves us with the final, huge question. The decisions we're all making right now, in boardrooms and in governments, are going to define our digital world for generations to come. So what's it going to be? Are we going to use these new tools to build bridges for a more secure, cooperative global village? Or are we all going to retreat behind our own heavily fortified but very isolated walled gardens? The future is still being written.